So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I welcome you to the round table where we continue the conversation of what it takes to actually build the CCUS systems from molecule to market. For the round table, I'd first like to invite the moderator to take his chair on the stage. Professor Sebastian C. Peter. May we hear it for Professor Peter? He's a faculty member at JNCSR's New Chemistry Unit, one of India's most active researchers in carbon capture as well as utilization. He's a convener for the first Center of Excellence on Carbon Capture and Utilization, in fact, in the country, supported by DST. He's developed catalysts that convert CO2 to methanol and other fuels, and has co-founded Breathe Applied Sciences, which reached the finals of the Global Carbon X Prize. In fact, speaking of which, the first CO2 methanol pilot plant was commissioned right here in Namma, which is Bangalore, in 2021 as a part of this X Prize competition. Professor Sebastian is also a member of DST's high-level task force on CCUS, and I welcome you to moderate this crucial roundtable. So, the applause can be a lot more generous, and please keep it going as I invite all our special speakers. It's not easy to get the best on one day, on one stage. Professor Vivek Polshettiwar. Professor Vivek comes to us from TIFR. He's an HTIF member. Professor Rajnish Kumar from IIT Madras, please. Professor Chinmoy Ranjan, IISc. Mr. Vishnu Rajeev, specially in West. Sushma Rawat, former head of exploration, ONGC. Mr. Lovish, Ahuja, Dalmia Cement, and Mr. Ashish Goel, ex-founder, Urban Ladder. I leave it to the moderator and the speakers to introduce themselves and their work. Over to you. To use this?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. So first of all, I would like to thank GPS for this wonderful platform you created. And then we had a good discussions in the morning part. Well, I'm also thankful to GPS for this opportunity to moderate them. And you look at the distinguished people in the podium. So you can see that each one has immense knowledge, and it's very difficult to handle them, to be honest. And if I ask the question, they will talk only hours and hours. So I request you just to stick the time, because we don't have enough time to do that. And we have 90 minutes in this one. And the 90 minutes, so we cover their own core area, their own team remarks about their research. And then 6 threads will be the starting from research to policy, and then winding up that one. So, I request each member, just 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. I know, you have to talk about coming, but certain cases we can close the talk. Okay. So, with this one, I just, my first question to my friend, Professor Vivek Polshettiwar. So, as you know, he is one of the, well-distinguished professor in the area of CCU. Particularly, his catalyst, DFNS, you all know, maybe knowing that. And so he discovered way back, a few years back, and around 150 groups at least, they are using that. And he's also successful in high-impact publications and etc. and all. Vivek, can you talk about that? What are the challenges you are facing, and if you want to scale it up or answer it?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So let me just introduce in 10 seconds what we do. So our group believes that the CO2 utilization is the ultimate solution, but it's extremely challenging. That if one look at the numbers, it looks like it's an impossible solution. And one has to understand the very basic reason why it is impossible, why it looks like impossible. The reason is CO2 is a linear molecule, it's 1 carbon and 2 oxygen. It's one of these stable molecules, and we know law of nature. If something is very stable, why will it convert into something else? So that means you need to put in lots of energy to convert CO2 into useful chemicals, and the energy required to activate the CO2 to convert into some useful product is more than what you're going to get. So how do we solve the problem? And that requires a fundamental research, which most of the time we try to ignore, and we always think, let us scale up things. So in our group, we're trying to ask this question that how do I activate the CO2, which allows me to do this process at a lower temperature? Right now, say CO2 to CO, the same gas fixed at 500 degrees Celsius. Can I do it at a room temperature? Can I convert CO2 to CO without the hydrogen gas? Some of these are the key challenges that a system this process is facing. And there we make different kind of nanomaterials. Nanomaterial has a very high surface area, surface energy, which activate the CO2 molecule which sits onto the surface. It bends them at a molecular level. And that simple bending can change your 500 degrees Celsius to 200 degrees Celsius. And even the dream is to do at a room temperature. So this is what we are trying to do in our lab.
Okay, yeah. You did not highlight, what are the challenges you're facing, the translation, come there later. Okay, so Chinmoy from IIC, Indian Institute of Science, so he's a professor in IPC, working in the area of electrochemistry. He does a lot of operando chemistry, try to understand the mechanistic aspect of CO2 behavior. So he developed certain process converting CO2 to CO, basically at high temperature, 800 degrees C or something like that. You developed this one. How do you look into that industry aspect of this one?
Thanks for organizers for inviting me. So one of the things is deficiency numbers. Yes. So the technology we use is called solid oxide technology. It's an electrochemical technology that works at high temperatures, between 600 to 800 degrees Celsius. Yes. And the basic idea is, as Vivek said, activation of CO2 is a challenge. Yes. As you increase the temperature, the activation becomes less of a challenge. Okay. So this is if you think of energy losses, activation-based losses, those become much lesser at higher temperatures. And especially if you look at electrolysis process, CO2 electrolysis process, it's an endothermic process. It likes also heat besides energy supplied as electricity. So there are a lot of synergies, yes. So if you look at point of source collections, you will see there is a lot of waste heat available. So this is one technology that can integrate waste heats, yes. So at this moment, if you think ever of the holy grail, which is, let's say, taking CO2 and converting into fuels, okay, that's the holy grail. That's the one thing that can balance your CO2 cycle. If you want to do that, this is one of the technologies to do that. Why? Because the efficiency numbers of these technologies are very high. Okay, and this is one of the technologies where you can take a CO2 molecule and purely convert it into CO without using any hydrogen. Okay, this is one of those technologies you can do that. But idea is you can take CO2, you can also take water at the same temperature, and you can electrolyze it together to make syngas. And the advantage is a syngas is a gas that you can do anything with. Okay. So this is something. So I see this technology as something of high value per se for these things. Yes. So this thing can, being at high temperature. Yes. What you can do is this technology is more resilient to a lot of contaminations that you typically associate with, let's say, collection of CO2 from various places. So you can handle, let's say, contaminations to a certain extent much more easily in a high temperature system than, let's say, a low temperature system. Yes, but then again, you have to be careful about the chemistry itself. But that being said, yes, this is a promising technology, we believe. Yes, and you can think, as I said, there are companies like Topso who are trying to commercialize technology. They have CO2 to CO processes they have developed by investing decades into them. So you can do it.
Yes, so thanks, Chinmoy. A couple of points. You work in the range of 800, but the recent nature paper from Northwestern, they're talking about 500 to 600. So somewhere, in that time, you can gain a lot of energy input. And so we can come back to that question. And second aspect, you're talking about Topso, the policymakers will understand a lot of licensing costs involved to have the technology in the country, right? And so this is also a challenging task whether we can have the technology here instead of depending on the technology.
Definitely, I'm not for importing technology. I'm all about PD.
Okay, all right, yeah. So we have Professor Ashish Kumar. So he is expert in CO2 capture and sequestration. I would say he is one of the pioneers in the area of gas hydrates. First in the country, I would say, developing this technology. And he is a professor at IIT Madras and the head of the sustainability department. Rajnish, I mean, you work on this capturing, storing of CO2. What's the big gap in India then and now? Because you developed this field, I mean, over a period of time.
Gap means in capture or in
Capture and storage, both if you cover that.
I think in today's world, I don't think there is much difference between what world is doing, what India is doing. We both are pretty much similarly progressing. The challenge has always been, and I think Dr. Ranjan has already pointed it out during his discussion, the two aspects, one is the thermodynamics and the other is kinetics. The biggest challenge I believe is the scale at which we have to operate. So for people who are aware, it's good, but those who are not aware, annually we emit 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide every year. The number is 40 billion tons. Now, if I have to become net zero, so all the discussion of CCUS and everything is mainly about net zero. So if you have to become net zero, roughly 50% of this carbon dioxide has to be eliminated. Whether the elimination would happen by moving from fossil fuel to renewable, or it has to be through carbon dioxide capture, utilization and sequestration. So 20 billion tons is a large number. Today, there is not a single carbon dioxide capture when we talk about, it's being done for many years. But today, there is not a single commercial plant across the globe which may claim that we are capturing more than 1 or 2% of the CO2 which we are emitting from the plant. This is the reality. So one has to always understand that all the solutions of amine and all was there. It was designed for mixtures of methane and CO2 or mixtures of carbon dioxide and hydrogen. It was not designed for flue gas. When you bring flue gas, this technology is not the best technology around, but we'll have to work on with the same technology. So if you are not worried about the large scale, if you are happy saying that we have demonstrated a lot of pilot plant, then you may say that CO2 capture has come to a level. But if you really look into the reality, CO2 sequestration demonstrations are many more. Tons and tons of CO2 is being sequestered. Compare that to CO2 capture, there are not that large scale implementations. So it may look like from the face value that sequestration is not being done, but actually in reality, there is lot of plants, there is lot of information which can basically tell you that CO2 sequestration is a mature technology. You can always sequester it. Now the challenge is about transportation and all. There is more discussion needed there. I can't take all the time since you asked me for 2 minutes. So as far as I am concerned, I don't believe that CO2 sequestration is a poor or not mature enough. I think it's much more mature than CO2 capture.
So you want to say that one, if you have good transportation, R&D, I mean, this could have been improved further, right? When compared to...
Yes, I think one has to also worry about the cost at which it can be delivered. And you talk about transportation and sequestration is much, much, much cheaper compared to CO2 utilization.
Okay, thanks, Rajnish. And we have one panel member online. So Lovish Ahuja, so he could not come here. So he's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Dalmia's Bharat. And the cement sector is one of the largest, sector emitting CO2 based on the processing, not on any other party. They cannot escape anything from that one. Lovish, can you hear us?
Yes, Lovish.
Yeah, nice. Oh, loud and clear. So, Lovish, so can you comment on what would be CCUS decision Dalmia, Bharat would actually take? So, what is your comment on that one?
Well, as you have already highlighted, that we do not have a privilege of not having the process emission. Calcination, as you all know, is the major culprit, if I have to put that word here, which generates almost 50 to 60% of my emissions. So even if I go 100% renewable, use best available environmental friendly cementitious materials, still I have a whole lot of much to do with. Professor Rajnish highlighted a very important point that the scale of CO2 which needs to be captured is still, I would say, galactically away from what we are dealing with now. So cement itself is close to 8 to 10 billion tons. My one big kiln generates something like 1.5 to 2 million tons per annum. So is CCU a potential solution for me? I would say it's an indispensable solution for me. Because if I have to use the trajectory of net zero or carbon negativity, there is no way out if I can't ignore it. But again, the big question comes at what cost? That's a very important thing. And I know this is not a new term, everybody's talking about it. But then we need to understand that at the end of the day, as a company, if I have to absorb this technology as a part and parcel of my process, where do I pass on this cost? So that's a big question. It's the end consumer. Is the consumer in India ready to invite that cost? I don't know. Even for that matter, if I talk about government intervention, yes, government is talking about carbon neutrality or net zero by 2070. But still, even if you look at government procurement contracts, there is no reference to low carbon cement. There is no prioritization for blended cement. Still, the ordinary Portland cement is the choice for them. So there is no market at the moment which is ready to absorb the cost associated with CCU or other even decarbonization level. But having said that, I do not want to shy away from my responsibility of acting as a good corporate citizen who takes care of the sustainability measures. So we are continuously evaluating the multiple options whereby CCU can become a solution for us. But it's not just purely limited to the cost. We have to also see where does it fit into my metrics of my entire plan. Because a lot of plants in India, especially the cement sector, they are 50 or 40 years old. I have to also see the CC unit which needs to be.
Lovish, can I intervene? So I just want to say this modern technology CO2 concrete. Have you thought about this technology can be integrated? I mean, this cement sector.
Yes, it can be integrated, but then we have to see what volume of capture it needs to be. If it is only giving a very small portion, whereby I am using it for curing or developing some alternative material, and if it is not giving me the scale, then I'm not sure at the moment whether I should put a lot of effort on this or look for other pathways, including the sequestration or the storage.
Okay. Thank you, Lovish. And so we will go to another distinguished member, Ms. Sushma Rawat. So she is the former Director of Exploration of ONGC. She has a lot of expertise, like in the area of upstream of oil and gas, geological exploration, subsurface expertise. The famous Pakri Barwad storage, borewell, and the EU CO2, enhanced oil recovery, etc. So, well-distinguished personality. So, Sushma ji, so what is your take on this ONGC for CCUS?
Namaskar and a very good morning to everyone present here. Indeed, it's a privilege to be amongst, so many distinguished domain experts in the industry. I'm basically a student of, earth processes. I study the earth landforms, past, present, future. Almost 4 decades of it. And I'm basically a geoscientist. Came into the industry after being a CSIR GRF as a geologist in ONGC, and had the honor of serving on the board of ONGC, looking after the indigenous exploration within the country. I'm just giving you a background because there's a lot of talk about sequestration or storage. And I have been chasing this CCUS for the past 7-8 years because ONGC, being a national oil company, we had the prerogative of actually recording a lot of subsurface data. And ours is a hidden world, everything that is below the surface. So it is very difficult to actually comprehend it. And when I say exploration, it is not only geology. There are 7-8 disciplines. We integrate the data and then come to an understanding of what the subsurface is. Of course, being an E&P company, exploration and production, looking for conventional oil and gas. But yes, as a student of geology, having studied minerals and coal and whatnot. So it's a very intriguing world, and I think I am still in a learning process. There's a whole lot which I do not know about. Coming to, I'll basically take up the utilization part of it, not the chemicals, not the catalysts, but in terms of the enhanced oil recovery, which we can do, from the subsurface. There are three aspects. I mean, don't mind if I prolong it along. There are three aspects of any oil, gas, or water entrapment. One is where it is generated from. The other is where it, migrates, and there is something which holds it back there, for centuries or for millennia. Okay? So we call it, one is the source, the other is the reservoir, and then there is a seal which stops its further migration and it just gets collected. That's how, all the big oil fields or gas fields have come into existence. Now, you switch over that scenario to carbon dioxide emissions, 40 billion tons all over the world, of which utilization, as we were talking about, in terms of converting it into some other molecule, it's a minuscule part. Also, in India, and if you can recall the map of India, the entire subsurface, and this is with reference to the basalts and the area which we were talking about, 3.13 million square kilometers of sedimentary basins. We have 26 types of sedimentary basins in India. And this is just the 2D I'm talking about, okay? And we have rock layers which go up to 10 kilometers of depth. Coming to rock types or different clays we call, because we did oil and gas resource assessment, 177 type of clays, different formations we call, of which Deccan basalt is one. So and the sequestrant or the storage, when we talk about Deccan basalt, we call it Deccan traps. The trap comes from the word layer in German. So when you see, like you can see in Hawaii, you have lava flows, we get different lava flows. But one thing which is to be taken into consideration, we have done a project in ONGC in which we try to estimate the volume of the entire Deccan basalt, which is about 80,000.
So I'm just intervening one thing. So basalt, I have limited knowledge. This is question, but this is considered as one of the promising area that you can do, but not much explored or not much scientifically studied. Right, that's what the feeling.
No. Basalt is not a reservoir. Now, it is a hard rock.
Mm-hmm.
We have sedimentary rocks, which are porous. Now, imagine injecting something into which is solid, which does not have very good porosity or permeability. There is a lot of talk of sequestration and chemical reactions in capturing, but let me tell you, the injectivity, the rate at which you can inject the CO2 into a rock, that will also bring the economy of scale for your project. I don't know how many of you would have heard of Northern Lights. Because CCUS Northern Lights almost equivalent. I'll talk about the details about it later. But 1.5 million tons per annum is their best, which they are predicting. They just started in 2025.
So I have second round connected with that question. Yeah. So we have resources, but where we are standing now. I'll come to that point.
Yeah,
okay. So due to the limited time. So we heard that to academicians, research, and then to industry, and we have two investors sitting over there. And the first one, Ashish Goel. He's the founder of Urban Ladder and advisor for Climatex Capital, co-founder of Optimus. So he has consistently invested in early stage climate startup, including Utilize, based in Bangalore for this membrane-less electrolyzer. I know them from the day one, how they build this one. So then Solar Square, Element Ray, Ray Technologies, and it's one interesting, actually, India is the first large consumer furniture. So And now focusing on our climate. So you will probably connected something around 350 around something. No, much above that one. So you have this. You are in this area. What do you find attractive in CCUS at this moment?
You're putting me on the spot. So just to give you a little more context, as an individual, over the last almost decade, we have invested in about touching 40 early stage climate tech companies. Pretty much most of the time, first checking, and some of the names are across sectors: hydrogen, solar, pretty Siemens, Siemens sort of I mean, these things evolve also. So one of the companies is trying to improve the climate impact of cement concrete. Now I run a business where we are trying to solve for heat stress, taking a climate adaptation lens and saying that over the next 10 years, as heat waves come up, we want to sort of build cooling solutions to solve for the largest number of people in India. So we believe in the importance of early risk capital coming into frontier areas. I think if I just at a very high level, I think what's exciting about CCUS overall, it's a very large-sized opportunity. I think that's an easy one to argue that over a longer period of time, CCUS is a very large capital outlay, right? A very large capital outlay, a very large revenue pool. That's the good part. The question really is timing, and timing in my mind, one is the environmental support, right? How ready is the environment? And environment in this case is whether it's a regulatory environment, whether it's carbon price. So that's one part. The second is the economic readiness, right? Is there a real economic case that we are able to? It doesn't need to be here and now, but at least there has to be a pathway to real economic case. I'll give you an example. We've been investing in rooftop solar for a number of years. Even 4 or 5 years back, there was a pretty negative view about risk capital being invested behind rooftop solar, right? Because the regulatory pathway was not clear, the systems were not set up, the economic value wasn't clear, and so on. But today that scenario has completely changed, right? So anybody who invested 2-3 years before that obviously has made a killing, right? The question really is in CCUS, without taking more time, I think for CCUS, really the question is either the regulatory environment becomes firm and unambiguous or somewhat unambiguous, right? So that somebody who's putting in risk capital is able to take a view that on a secular basis, forward-looking, there is goodness that we can see, or the economic case becomes much stronger. And definitely there is an opportunity on the usage side. I'm not enough of a science person to say whether that opportunity, how far down the road is it, but arguably there is a need for support on the carbon price side as well. So that's, I think, my starting point.
Thanks a lot. I will come back to you with more details. So our one investor, Vishnu Rajeev, so he's a partner of Special Invest, outstanding background. He's from Harvard Kennedy School, and he funded 600 crore in 2025. Fund over the time, and then 2026 triple of that one expected to be. So that's what I can read. And co-founded Climate Tech for India. There are around 700 plus founders and investors.
With him.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So he is also board member of Utilize as well, if my understanding correct. Right. So I have a very general question. So you have so many this funding. Before you sign the check, what you think about? What do you expect?
What do I think? That's a tough question. Especially to make a team.
Being an academician, we develop a lot of technology. You would like to know that.
Yeah. I'll give a little bit more clarity on the kind of work we do at Special. So we are a deep science, deep tech focused venture capital fund. So we only invest in companies which are heavily rooted in R&D, science and engineering. Not exclusively on the climate side. We invest across space tech, energy transition, industrial decarbonization, semiconductors, robotics, quantum, biotechnology, life sciences, and so on. Some of the largest deep tech companies like Archegos Cosmos, we were the earliest, largest investors in them, the space tech startup. We supported umpteen number of professors from IISc, IIT, Bombay, IIT, Madras, who have started their own startups, including Dr. Satya Chakraborty, who runs Dr. E-Plane company. In climate, we have invested in green hydrogen, new trace, as you said. There are a couple of electrochemistry companies in energy storage. We invested in India's first funded nuclear fusion startup, which was with DIFR in Hyderabad, Anubal Fusion. So that's just to say that we do invest in science. To answer your question, what we look into when we invest in science-based startups, typically what we look into I can put it into 4 buckets. Starting with the technology side of things, because we are taking extremely high science and technology risk, we also want to see the technology moat over there. Is there like something very defensible, something which can create extraordinary impact on some of the problems that we are facing? And this impact would be global, but it would also be strategic, really important for the country as well. We only invest in Indian startups, so that way. The second,
Are they early startup or in something?
we invest in, the phrase TRL levels are more. So we have invested from TRL 3 to TRL 5, 6. So all of them, we are pre-seed stage investors. So most of the time we are the first institution.
So basically lab proven technology, right?
Sometimes even before that. At least now in the last few years, there is enough grants coming in from government and philanthropy and so on to support that. But we started in 2017 when the phrase deep tech was not even there. And at that point of time, while equity, which is what I do, equity capital is not the right way to kill some of the sciences we have taken. We made investments in companies which were ideally should have been funded through grants. So even earlier stage, some might be just a team bet. That's the second point I was about to say. The team is very, very important to us. Like team with extremely good capabilities in technology, execution, complementary skill sets between the co-founders. When I say team, it means a co-founding team. How they work together with each other, their capabilities, what's proven, what they can do, and so on. The third would be the market opportunity in itself. Large opportunity, if I have to put dollar numbers to it, when they get to the market, they should be addressing multi-billion-dollar opportunities. And we have enough of that anyway. Globally is fine, but if you have a plan, pathway to go forward. And then the path to commercialization, I think that's most relevant to CCUS as well. Like, how do you get to market? Like, how does the unit economics mix work? It needs to make business sense. So.
Thanks a lot. So we'll come back to you in much more detail. So with that, I'm just going to the third. So I would say, so at this round, I just focus on our academic colleagues more than investors. A little bit I will ask about, so the industry point of view. The idea is actually, Dr. Lele and Dr. Rai, they mentioned, so we have the industry facilities here. We have a lot of infrastructure, but somewhere, we are missing to take it outside. So what India has built and what it still needs, so we have to think. And so we do a lot of good science, but so I go with my friend Vivek. So you have outstanding fundamental science in terms of CCU, particularly for catalytic CO2 reduction, to syngas. If I bring an industry, the same technology, and you, whatever you did in DFR, your honest answer, what would be the difference?
So you're saying there is a technology with the industry and then my technology?
Yes. You already have the technology, very outstanding science, but I want you to scale it up and somebody come on board and then do that, so what would be?
Okay. So obviously there are no technology which uses photocatalysis for CO2 utilization. But I think the bigger question is, once we discover something in the lab, how do we take it to the industry scale and what are the challenges that we face? And I really take 1 minute to explain. which generally we don't discuss, which we ignore the fundamental science. So photocatalysis is, I'm just trying to use a very basic concept, is a powder, a nanomaterial, which you expose with the sunlight, right? And you also pass CO2 and hydrogen or CO2 and water, and you convert that CO2 into CO, methanol, whatever you need. It's a very simple process. Now, when you do it in a lab, you take a very small amount of a powder, 5 milligram, 10 milligram. You can nicely spread across, and then you put a light in. So every particle of that powder sees the photon, sees the sunlight, and things works perfectly fine. But as soon as you go to the industry at a bigger scale, you need to now take a 10 gram or 100 gram, and there's a fundamental challenge with the light. That light penetration depth could be few micrometer, so it cannot penetrate. So what is required now is a completely different reactor design, which allows every particle of that catalyst to see the sunlight, which cannot be done using the conventional processes. And that's where people try to hesitate, right? Because they see that there's no ROI here. There's a, say, 99% failure and 1% success.
So can we mimic the solar cell, solar panel that we have developed?
There are various ways. Solar panel is one example. Fluidized way. There could be very different ways. The problem is, who will do it? Can I do it? I can't do it. I am a synthetic chemist. You are a synthetic chemist. What you need is a chemical engineer. And unfortunately, the industry don't have those expertise because they never work with the photocatalysis. It's across the nation. So there is a lack of expertise and then lack of intention to take a risk and do this.
So that's the serious gap coming you find, to take it forward, right? Yeah. So whatever it is. So thanks, Vivek. So same with Chinmoy, so you have, as we discussed, you have the technology CO2 to CO at high temperature, and if you look at the cement industry, you can think about, we are always dealing with the high temperature business, more than 800, and then you have large amount of CO2 17 at that temperature. So if you take into account, is there any way you can transfer it immediately to the cement industry, for example?
Yeah, definitely. Cement industry.
So to save the energy because you don't have to warm
Yeah,
it.
we have a lot of synergies with cement industry simply because the temperature things are very high.
Can you use the mic, please?
So if you look at cement industry, the processes that you are running. So there are two kinds of CO2 you make in cement industry. One is the process CO2, which is basically you're degrading calcium carbonate and making CO2. And second thing is you're burning some fuel to you're creating CO2. So now these are two different grades of CO2 fundamentally. Now, if you think of it, CO2 that's coming from process has literally much higher purity, can be handled much better. And then you have, of course, the grade of CO2 that is essentially like fuelless. So the thing is, the best part of cement industry is that it's already a process at very high temperature. Okay. And your high temperature reaction, as I said, the electrolysis process and endothermic. So there is a huge synergy between. So essentially your electrical energy efficiency increases significantly if you operate because there's a lot of waste in the delivery. So that is fundamentally available with cement.
So do you see that is economically more viable?
Definitely, yes.
Okay. But it also involved a lot of other gases, how that will affect your performance in terms of poisoning or other decomposition of the catalyst.
See, what you would normally see is, let's say, there are two risks. What you would see with a lot of CO2 processes is fundamentally a risk coming from either oxygen present in the stream or sulfur present in the stream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So sulfur, generally you have to, so if you think of point of source collection of CO2 from anything, yes, you generally would need a technology that delivers relatively clean CO2 for a lot of these applications. Mm-hmm. So you would need specific treatment plants, okay, depending upon the source, because all the source, even if they are very similar, let's say even thermal power, they all produce different amounts of impurities based on where they're coming from. So you need to have, so let's say you have sulfur. Okay, so you have to implement desulfurization technology, okay, to handle, because a lot of catalysts would handle sulfur, but some of them won't. Okay, some of them will die at 50 ppm of sulfur. Same thing with oxygen. Oxygen actually, the reason is if you look at CO2 and oxygen, the molecules are very similar, as I said, linear molecules. And a lot of chemistry that CO2 reduction also is applicable to oxygen reduction. So what it results in a lot of parasitic reactions. So if you have oxygen, let's say if I have a CO2 stream that is 100%, but let's say I have 5% oxygen, you'll realize that a lot of reaction is running through oxygen.
So, sorry for much more technical, that reduction potential also should be very close, right, in that case?
Yes. The reduction potentials are very close. Actually, the thing is, CO2 reduction potential or the energies, if you simplify it, the energy required to reduce CO2, yes, is much, let's say more than energy required to reduce O2. Okay, so when you're running an electrochemical process, the overall potential that you have for oxygen reduction is much higher than that of CO2. So you run this.
So basically, one stone, two birds principle you can apply. Okay, so thanks, Chinmoy. So Rajnish, I mean, I know Rajnish very well. So, well, I mean, Rajnish, we have 500 to 1,000 ton of estimated storage capacity, or even beyond. You have the correct number probably. You have the technology, and if you really want to take, I mean, what actually India need the pilot scale, or have you ever built the pilot scale? I know that one, but others would like to listen that one. Have you ever made any pilot scale for the CO2 storage, sequestration, or particular storage? I mean, can you comment on that one?
See, pilot scale for CO2 sequestration, one of the biggest challenges is that if you are trying to do it in lab, maximum you can do what? 50 liters, 100 liters, how big you can go.
Okay.
Pilot scale for CO2 sequestration happens on the ground. It's actually a live project. And this is the biggest bottleneck for doing piloting of CO2 sequestration, because there is 100 different types of permissions you would need from 100 different places. Many places you don't even know where you would have to go for getting those kind of permissions. So this is one of the challenge for actually doing a piloting of sequestration. See, in the lab we have done, for example, the hydrates you talked about, this project was not for Shell, it was for Goel. We have done the technology transfer. It's being done like almost 8 years back. They have the technology, but then the first pilot they can go, the requirement is roughly 2,000 crores of investment.
Oh.
Now the question is that if you have to do 2,000 crores of investment to basically test it, now someone has to come forward and say, okay, fine. So this is the challenge of doing sequestration at a scale. If you are trying to go for a new technology.
Ashish and Vishnu are here.
You are going for a new technology. But if you are going for EOR kind of approach, then it's not new technology. Already the drilling and everything is there. It has been capped. So you can basically do it at much cheaper price. So now when we talk about sequestration, and if you have, say, for most of the units, especially what Manak and all would be doing, 100 tons to 500 tons kind of per day capacity. Even from 500 tons to 1,000 per day capacity, you need not bother about pipeline. No one does pipeline for such a small amount of CO2. Trucking has worked throughout the world, and it will work here. If you do the cost comparison, the CO2 has to be captured somehow. Whether you're utilizing it or sequestering it, that is roughly 5 rupees a kg. In Indian context, 4.5 rupees to 5 rupees a kg, you can capture CO2. How scalable the technology is, that we will talk about later. But its pilots are there, and this is the cost at which it comes. So 5 rupees a kg for CO2 capture. Now, if the first thing you have to do, once you have the CO2, then you basically liquefy it, because that is what would be needed for you to for the trucking. Liquefaction is very simple process. You need roughly 100 to 120 kilowatt hours or units of electricity for liquefying 1 ton of carbon dioxide. How much is that? If you are using solar energy, it's like 3.5 rupees per kg. So 120 units is like roughly 3,000 rupees. So that's not a big amount, 1,000 rupees. 100 into 3,000 rupees. 3,500 rupees. After that, you will have to truck it. Now, let's say the location where you have to sequester is 200 kilometers from here. 200 kilometers is a large distance. So 200 going, 200 coming back. For a diesel powered truck, even if you can basically, 200 is not a good number. Yeah, so 200 is a reasonable number. If you do those calculations, it turns out that roughly per ton of carbon dioxide, with the cost will be roughly 2,000 rupees. Okay, and then what is the sequestration? Since you have all the drilling and everything has already been done, so it turns out to be roughly 500, 800, 1,000 maximum per ton. So if you add up all the cost of liquefying the CO2, transporting the CO2, sequestering the CO2, it turns out to be hardly 3,000 to 3,005 rupees, which is 3,500 rupees per ton. Okay. Now that basically means you have been able to avoid carbon dioxide at 3,500 rupees per roughly 35 rupees per kg.
Okay.
Now let's try to do it for utilization. For per ton of carbon dioxide, if you are going to utilize, for thermochemical process, you are going to need 0.2 tons of hydrogen. And if you are going
It depends on the chemical you are looking for.
yeah, typically I'm saying for ethanol will be slightly higher, for methanol will be slightly lower. For a bioprocesses like Ranjan process, which a bioprocess where you have to basically convert carbon dioxide into some chemical, the hydrogen requirement is more because you are also supplying hydrogen for the growth of the biomass which you are putting there. There, for per ton of carbon dioxide, you consume roughly 0.4 tons of hydrogen. So now let's try to do a math. If I am going to avoid 1 ton of carbon dioxide by utilization, it turns out to roughly 75,000 to 80,000 rupees. Now, I know you will sell it off, but sell it at what price? 1/3 of that. So, if you really talk about the cost itself, sequestration turns out to be much cheaper. Yeah, it does not look sexy enough that, okay, you are putting it down somewhere. It's not being recycled and all. It looks very nice that, okay, we have been able to consume, produce a fuel out of it.
Oh, okay. So I'm just changing the phone to Sushma ji. She already took the phone. And Lovish also, you can comment. I mean, you heard, all these academicians talking about, what's your take? We have the technology, but there are certain points need to be addressed.
Technology is there. It's a proven technology because it's being done globally, right? There are a number of projects. Number one, trucking doesn't make sense. Why? Because you would be burning some kind of energy, taking that CO2 to the point of capture, to the point of, putting it inside. So your overall, again, carbon impact, I don't know. That needs to be calculated. The other thing what I feel is, and I was just looking at the capex for the Northern Lights or the Sleipner. Just giving a background, Sleipner was a field in Norway, North Sea, discovered in 1974. They produced, and then they had, of course, a very high percentage of CO2. So once their reservoirs started depleting, they started pumping back that CO2 to maintain the reservoir pressure. There was no talk of CCUS at that time. So it's a proven technology. There are Gorgon projects in Australia. There are so many projects all across. ExxonMobil has done. ONGC had an MOU with Equinor, in which we were trying to do it for the Gandhar field, again, an oil depletion field. The economics of it does not make sense. So, the big companies, yes, cash-rich companies, they might do it because they can afford to. Unless and until either you tax the emissions or you reward the sequestration, why would any company go for it? Of course, the carbon trading market, that has to be established, because how do you come with the hurdle rate for your project or the seller? So, and transportation, because everywhere there are pipelines that will entail cost, because the kind of steel that is required for carbon dioxide will be different kind, chromium listing steel, which costs about 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per meter. And when we were doing Koyali and Gandhar tie-up with IOC, which is around 81 kilometers apart, the pipelines and everything, the cost per barrel of enhanced oil recovered was $162 per barrel. This is in 21. So, might be the cost has gone down, or might be because of the metals, the cost has come up. That needs to be seen. And what I would like to say at this point of time, we had Dr. Ray talk about the elephant. I will say elephant in a different perspective. We are looking at the same problem from my point of view.
Yeah, okay.
Either ONGC doing it or NTPC doing it or the academy doing it. What we need to do is form a consortium.
Yeah, thanks. So nicely covered. That on the cement sector, a kind of nearly pure CO2, or if you got a steel, it's mixed full stream. Or if you got biogas or some sugar industry, it's pure, but anything to atmosphere, etc. But in different sectors, different sources are different. Okay. So here we heard, Lovish, you are online of the cement sector. So you may have heard, technology of that developed by Chinmoy Ranjan at high temperature, 800 degrees C, and then basically your team is exactly in the same high temperature. So he developed the technologies, you to CEO, and what you need additional to take it forward from him.
No, I think I do not have that level of competence to judge what Professor Chinmoy is saying or not, but maybe I will give few pointers. First, for us, the exhaust gases for which we will be putting the carbon captures would be around 80 to 90 degrees Celsius and not 800, because I think cement industry has gone a long way in terms of establishing a waste recovery system. So that's the money for us. So that is not the temperature of outlet gases. But more important for us is whatever technological solution which comes, we have to make sure that the cost should fit in within my economic reality. And then that's a very important lever which we can't ignore. Second, we have to make sure that these technologies have to evolve, which should not disrupt my kiln operation. Because at the end of the cement manufacturing is my core strength. So we have to see how it integrates with my operation. Then we have to also ensure that whatever inlet gases which comes to the system should be designed such a manner that the dust loading, SOx, NOx. I know that Professor Chinmoy was mentioning that the system can take care of it, but if that kind of guarantee comes in, that disruption will not happen because of the variable input characteristic. That is something which we look at. Then we have to also look into the fact that once we capture this carbon and convert it into whatever pathway which is suitable, we have to see how the value chain is established and what benefits I get as a company in terms of reducing the overall cost of putting this system. That's an important parameter for us to consider. And then also we have to ensure that the supporting policy structure should be such that whatever investments which we put here or we take some kind of support from other agencies, that is not at risk because of flip-flopping policy priorities for the government. So all these things have to be seen in a holistic manner for us to decide whether this particular technological intervention will work or not.
Oh, yeah.
We should take care of is when you think of CCUS, you're talking of large-scale commodity businesses. You're talking about cement, you're talking about electricity, you're talking about aluminum, yes. And commodity businesses don't fundamentally invest in disruptive technologies. That's the nature of it. So we have to realize. So when we ask a company to say, okay, invest in creating a pilot plant, that's very difficult because, of course, he said he has to care for the bottom line. And why should he care for the bottom line unless he's been made to care for the bottom line? So there is a very large role that a government has to play in this. Yes. And simply, it's not just that it will. I can tell you that we are being very reactive. Okay, when we say, okay, 4 years you have to develop technology and you have to achieve these things, it's very reactive. You have to plan these things strategically for next decade or so. Yes, and then you have technologies that you own that you can implement. So I will say there is a very strong role that the government has to play, and these technologies are, by the way, not just economically relevant; they are of high strategic importance if you look at the geopolitical instabilities present in the scenario.
Thank you, Lovish, and thank you, Chinmoy, amending on that one. So I mentioned multiple sectors are there. It's an open question to anybody can answer that one. Where we should start? Which sector?
I'll say, just take a start. Because I think we are too worried about who will take a start, where to take a start. I think, Sebastian, you have done already a lot in terms of going, just take a start, go to the market.
Yeah, but economical aspects, or in the country's energy demand, or country's net zero strategic plan, which should pilot, or now it's such a roadmap we created. You have to do something for the country, something for this humanity and sustainability, etc. So, but to get more confidence, we can do I mean, then we can extend or we can change that one sector to another sector. If you strategically do that, we want to get more confidence in the CCUS community and get a gain of confidence of the social, common people. I mean, so where you can start?
I'll just say there are two aspects to it. One is the chemical aspect, the utilization part, in which academia and a lot of laboratories are working. I think one project should be focused only onto the utilization part, the other onto the EOR and the subsurface, like the surface and the subsurface. So we need to have these two approaches right on. And also, because I was a part of the meeting.
Sorry, I just reframed the question. Which sector would be the best option? So cement or steel or the power sector?
From that point of view, they are the emitters. The first thing which can be told to them is please decrease your emissions. Number one. The second is, of course, you can ask them, what we try to do, within ONGC, what we tried to do when we were studying CCUS is try to see where the hard to, these sectors were, hardcore steel, cement, refineries, the hub and the spoke model, and where they could be sequestered subsurface. Okay. So we created these kind of spots, and we saw one area is industrial area around Delhi, the other one around the coal industry, the other steel and coal, the other one in Gujarat, and then see where you can sequester them in the subsurface to nearest point to it. Because see, one thing which we have not talked about is the environmental impact. CO2 is highly mobile. We do simulation models 10 years from now, computerized 10 years from now, where my CO2 is, and it is very buoyant. So it travels. And other companies, not only in India, Saudi Aramco, other companies, they have seen that CO2 20 years down the line, it has actually moved where they never thought it would be moving in the models. And again, you have the subsurface water, the potable water. So what is going to be the environmental impact? We are trying to say one part of it and creating some other kind of a problem. So I think all those things have to be taken into consideration, and a spot. Of course, India is a very populated place, or then it has to be in the offshore like it is first like that. Okay, so I think subsurface skill, if you're asking which sector, might be the oil companies, because they know the subsurface where it can be done best. They already have the models, they can simulate it because we do it for oil and gas. We have laboratories, like if I talk about ONGC, where we have done the simulation, where we, for CO2.
Okay.
So I think that can be the starting point.
Yeah, so Rajnish, can you comment on that?
I'll give you the example what was done in US. So enhanced oil recovery, madam clearly pointed out that it costs roughly $160 per barrel. It goes up from 80 to 160, let's say. So what US has done, they have basically given $85 subsidy. So
close to.
$85 subsidy. So that basically makes it easy for them to do that. That has not happened in India. So that is something which everyone is pointing out. If anything has to happen, there has to be some policies which has to be framed first. When it comes to CO2 capture, if you're talking about sector, which will be the easiest? Personally, technically, I believe cement sector would be the easiest, because the CO2 concentration coming out from the cement sector is probably the highest in the mix. There are a lot of technology changes which would be needed. And if you can do that, then right now, for example, in the clean the flue gas mixes, that basically creates a lot of issues. So if you can develop alternate technologies, that it will work better there. In CRAF 20 or something, which has been already working in some places. So cement industry seems to be easier. Steel also seems to be decent. It's not that bad. In power sector, where there is the most emission coming from, is basically the CO2 concentration is pretty lean. Then we have SOx, NOx challenges. All of those challenges are there. And power sector is more suitable for going from fossil to non-fossil fuel based. You will be able to basically get a lot better outcome by moving from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel based. But then it cannot happen over the night. See, we have roughly 250 gigawatt of installed capacity in the country, which has happened in 40 years. If we are going to go from similar, we have to replace from renewable, it has to be roughly 1,000 gigawatt installed capacity. It cannot happen in 1 year, 2 years. It will take another 40 years for us to do that. So in this process of doing this transition, we'll have to rely on CCUS and we'll have to do that. This is a bridging solution between the future where everything will be renewable and of current where everything is non-renewable. So this is the data. As far as renewable is concerned, India was much having higher renewable capacity, or in a sense, the energy mix in India in 1985 was roughly 25% plus renewable. Today we are only 20% renewable. So it basically means that it's not very easy for you to go from non-renewable to renewable. We have actually gone down. Now, yes. I'm saying when we talk about renewable in 1980s,
80s was last year.
Yeah. So the overall the numbers are like that. And the consumption of our electricity increased, and we put too many coal-fired power plant. And today, in 1990s, we were having only 10% renewable in our energy mix. We have improved after that, and today we have 20% renewable in our energy mix. When I say 20, it's hydro, biomass, solar, everything put together. So it's basically I am trying to say that the demand of energy has increased significantly, and we have not been able to actually replace that much. Even our GDP growth is roughly 7%, and the solar installation is handling at 5%. So there is still some 2-3% gap. So that requires a lot more investment, and not only investment, I think availability is also a problem today of solar panels and all.
Yeah, please. Mike, another one.
I just wanted to add just a market angle to whatever we have discussed from the sector, right? Chemistry aside, the government has not been ready to give clear signals of cap trade mechanisms, and rightfully so, given our country, the development stage we can't put that kind of restrictions as such. One thing we can actually rely on is to look into the regulatory restrictions in other markets. So CBAM being very, very strictly enforced, I feel that steel would be steel, especially the export steel, would be an interesting area to start with, because green steel from 2026 they are going to get really heavily penalized if they don't go with the CBAM. So probably steel is a low-hanging fruit from a market perspective. Which is another sector which is not there in the CCUS vision, but I still feel has CBAM implications is textiles. Textiles also the green premium on textiles.
If I understand correctly, you have the CBAM already there, right? I mean, some of
it is. Absolutely. So the point is
selected the industry sector.
Yeah. So
I think Dalmia Bharat, in Rawat, you have that one.
Cement is not that.
Is it?
Export that much cement. No, we need to
Okay, all right.
Export-oriented industries is the key I'm trying to say. And even within steel, it's mostly going to be the steel plants which are located along the coastlines. The ones which are interior will mostly consume domestically. So from an economic market sense, the sector preference could also be these couple of industries.
Wonderful. Yes.
Steel is definitely.
And we export a lot of steel actually.
And the concentration of CO2 in flue gas from steel is also not really high, but still high enough for some of the technologies to get there and do something.
That depends on the blast furnace or different technology. That will vary the composition also. Yeah. Anyway, so thanks for pitching that one. So no, I'm just changing the gear. So we heard that 20,000 crore already announced. I would like to personally thank on behalf of our HDF team. Thanks to the government of India to announce that big money. The question is that, based on this, we have technology, we have science, and everything is there, but also we understood that there is a gap between academy and science and technology. There is a gap, and how to translate that. So who can take it? Who is responsible? How we can take it? Okay, we have to find a path. Next 4 years, 5 years, how we can utilize this 20,000 crore, efficiently. Personally, my experience, I started in 2016. I took 5 to 6 years to make a small 200, 300 kilogram of CO2 methanol in JNCSR. Another 4 or 5 years to make it in one turn. Okay, so I had gone through a lot of painful path actually. Learning curve. It was interesting journey though, but I took almost 10 years even to reach one ton per day capacity, and still we are in the process of operational time and everything. So if you look at another 10 years, 2035, 2036 or whatever, how do we see that? It's open to anybody. So how we can take the path? Oh yeah, please.
If I may this question.
Yes, Lovish, anybody,
Yeah, see, my view as an industry player would be how do we actually monetize this funding available in the right manner so that industry gets the confidence and can take it forward. So, one important suggestion which we have been echoing in various forums is that government should pick 2 or maybe 4 at the max large scale projects whereby they use this money in utilizing the entire value chain of CCU. Okay. Well, yes, there is an importance of R&D, small 1 ton, 2 ton project that they can do in the sideline, but they need to have a big chunk of allocation going on, hardcore, big 50 ton or 100 ton, because that will actually create an exact knowledge which will give the confidence to the industry to take it forward. That's my important take, which I would like to go ahead.
Lovish, thanks a lot. I just want to inform you, probably the public may not be knowing that on DST, we are coming from that. So we have a lot of initiative, pilot scale model, focusing on cement sector, steel sector, power sector. Recently we funded to cement sector, 6 such the pilot scale plants across the country, including Dalmi also, you know that funding is not but approved technology, but the funding for power sector already given to that one. So, and then we how to actually map across the country. But is it going to slow down if you focus only 2-3 models? Probably it will take another 2-3 years, 4 years, etc. And all. That can slow down our overall process. Is it difficult to use?
What I would like to emphasize is that the project aspects which you are talking, they are 1 ton, 2 ton, or 5 ton. As an industry, I can tell you, I will not get the confidence on the value chain with these products. I need they want to understand all the nuances, all the risks, then I will be able to convince my shareholder that this is the way forward.
Okay, all right. Vivek, please.
Yeah. So I'm also excited about this big number, 20,000 crores, and I participated in this post-budget seminar conversation. So out of that, 2,000 is for 2,500 for fundamental research, around 3,000 for pilot plan. The rest is a soft loan to the industry to take their technologies. I think the bigger question is, look, everyone is talking about upscaling, financing, and I think the critical question that we are ignoring is, do we really have the technologies? Do we really have a catalyst which can be commercially viable? Do we really have a solvent which is commercially viable? So working in this field for last 15 years, my answer is no. We don't have. And so why are we rushing? That's why most of the startups and pilot plants are failing, because of these optics. Everyone claims they have a big number, they're going to make a methanol in 15 rupees a liter, 10 tons, 20 tons. No one is critically analyzing these numbers. Right? So it's all about optics and the real science. So what should be path forward? Dr. Ashish clearly said this, that I need a catalytic system which works at 100 degrees Celsius, bar pressure. Now the next question is, how do we get to that? That cannot be a magic. That is a fundamental science. And how do you do the fundamental science? I just want to explain this. So let us say there is a catalyst which works at 500 degrees Celsius. I want to bring it to 100 degrees Celsius. How do I do it? Now I need to understand why that catalyst requires 500 degrees Celsius. That requires high-end in situ techniques, spectroscopic techniques. We have none. In this country, we have none. We are 20 years behind some of the best. So even with the 20,000 crore invested, the way we are working, I don't think we're going to have any more. We can keep selling. We can keep publishing lots of paper. I think you and me are on the same boat. But I don't see it going to happen. So they require a radical change in the way we do it, more critical analysis, more radical change in the infrastructure and the way we do it rather than the optics. That's my
Yeah, thanks, Vivek, pointing this one. We have a critical note here. I partially agree with that one. We have to go a long way on the fundamental science part to develop it, because the catalyst and so called, it's the heart of the technology. And if you don't have that, the best out of that, so what do you do with that one? So, yeah, but again, that one, there are certain corners, some scientists, they work and good catalysts, but somehow they miss the bus, they don't know how to take it forward. So that gap, probably we need to feel, if the industry or investors, they understand this technology access, they can reach the academicians, to take it forward. Certain cases, I noticed that when they don't go beyond publications, say for example. Yes, Chinmoy.
I would say, yeah. So, as Vivek pointed out, it's a very, very important point. We have had this discussion before also. The science is very nuanced, okay? It is very detailed. And we actually, if I ask a simple question, yes, we are not even creating sufficient ability to be able to sustain such a lethal technology in future. That's the reality. If you ask, we had a PhD competition for best thesis awards in CO2 area open to all. We had barely 35 submissions across India. So you can realize how many CO2 researchers or quality people who can handle and take technologies forward we are able to create. Okay, so we have to realize something. In India, we lack high quality manpower at scale. This is the problem. Okay, we have a lot of manpower.
I just add into that when I just try to cover number of publications, less than 100 in a year.
Yes, we're talking about 20,000 crores, but to be able to handle that 20,000 crores, you need captains, lieutenants, brigadiers who can take it forward. Yes, you don't have those. You don't really have those. That's unfortunately the truth. And we may say, okay, you want a TPD, 2 TPD, 10 TPD. We can talk about all the TPD, but I'll tell you, in terms of grand scale, you don't have sensitive control. That is a very precise control. Okay, and I'll suggest one solution is information-rich research. When you're running these processes, if you are able to collect much more information than what is the norm, as pointed out by Professor. Yes. So if you are able to do that, then you can able to translate these things better.
Just if you come you want to say that.
Yeah. So we don't want to give an impression that there is no talent in there. I personally believe that we run this unit and network, which has almost all the researchers and the students. There is a huge talent. I think no other country will have this much of talent, because CCUS is all about materials design, catalysis, at least capture and conversion. There is no shortage of talent. That's how I really want to say. What is required is the infrastructure.
Yeah.
That is the lacking thing. Once we solve this problem, I think within the next 5 years, we could have the dream solvent, the dream catalyst. Just 5 years with a proper infrastructure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ashish, sorry, I'm just going to have a slightly different view on this. I think of course, this field is relatively in the recent stage. Work has been happening for a number of years, but it's in the recent stage. Absolutely, if you look at, let's say, if you look at any, not being uncharitable about the work of the government, because the government works in a certain way. But let's say the government has a 20,000 crore outlay, which is put down on paper. And let's say there's a 5,000 crores towards research and FOAK plans, right? I think if over the next 5 years, right, if those two actually get deployed, for example, in the infrastructure build, whether it's machinery, equipment, etc., manpower, all of that, and the X number of FOAK plants, first of kind plants come through, right? I think that will be a good win. Really speaking, I would be very, very surprised if there is real offtake of debt towards industry taking up plants in the short term. And I call 5 years short term. For work like this, when there is core research required, we have to be sort of honest about the realities. I actually think that the large government outlay put down on paper is incredible signaling. I don't think we should underplay the importance of that signaling, right? These things take time. That signaling hopefully sort of, has other multiplier benefits as well.
Okay, all right. Since did you map them and what are the startups in the country who can contribute in CCUS by any chance? Because you are ready to invest.
I never mapped, but I've spoken to many.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I never done a full mapping exercise.
Okay. But is it, anything anyway? You can see that the number is good number in the country compared to outside.
Yeah. So, see, I don't have a view on the quantity of the startups as such, but it's been a very tough journey for startups to get to the unit economics, making the unit economics work. To add to the point what Lovish was saying around the end customer, and I'm all for investing in fundamental research and making technologies work, but it is equally important for us to do it in tandem with the end consumer. This is not a place where we have to just do, we can publish papers and fundamental research can, create outputs over there. It has to translate. Translation is the big trouble which I've seen, and startups are struggling with as well. Okay. So, for me, when I've been evaluating CCUS startups, the biggest trouble has been to just show how when the fundamental unit economics work. What is the number of capex? A couple of startups which have gone in depth in evaluating, but eventually ended up saying no. One of the questions was like, okay, take one Tata Steel's plant, any one which they pick. What is the emissions they have in a year? If they have to convert the whole plant, maybe capture the entire carbon or whatever the carbon coming out of it in a year, what is the level of investment, capex that is required from the technology? People are not able to come out with an answer, which is, and so for as an investor in the early stage, when will those technologies mature? When will the industry be ready? There is no clear timelines, that's this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Nobody has any idea about that.
Yeah, I'm not saying we have invested in nuclear fusion. I'm not saying I want complete, absolute clarity. We are early risk takers. But just to even you are sitting with a technology in front of me, a startup. Can you at least show me a pathway? Okay, 2035. Here is a reasonable amount of capex investment required to convert one of those smallest plants that Tata is operating. Or whatever. I'm just taking Tata Steel as one example. But that numbers are not there. And that numbers, how does the capex will go down? People are not able to even demonstrate that. And that for me signals that the research on the early technologies are not working in tandem with how the scaling in the engineering challenges, how we will translate into engineering challenges and how we can set up industrial scale.
I'll just share my experience. One is of course what Vivek is saying. The other is the EPC. This thing system is not there. The ecosystem is not there.
Not there. Yes.
Because from ONGC, I tried talking to Vivek. They came with a big list of environmental. This thing they say first you confirm that there will be no environmental impact. It's very difficult for me on my own just to say, even as a company.
Yes.
The ecosystem has to come together. That's why I keep saying this consortium. Everybody has to put in their best.
So we have to learn and advance in this area. Very precisely.
That's why startups are finding it difficult because they're small. They cannot get all the pieces together at one place.
And the EPC ecosystem won't develop unless the technology is sufficiently de-risked. The technology itself is at a very, very early nascent stages, and people won't have visibility to when the EPCs are out of takers. They will come and establish their infrastructure players. Infrastructure players want to just come and build stuff, and we don't have that kind of de-risking in the technology.
Exactly.
Yeah, so a lot of questions, but I don't know how much time actually. We understand there is some difficulty, that academicians and the industry connection, etc. So, how we can make a real partnership. So, there are successful stories also. For example, Rajnish Kumar, he has a very long, successful collaboration with the Shell, so particularly Shell Industries in his institute, multiple projects are there. Rajnish, can you comment when you talk about your technology to them and what they contribute to change your lab atmosphere towards the industry demand?
Very complex question. But yeah, Cell came much later. I think I was initially in Cell and worked with Goel. Probably Goel funded some 7 projects over the period of last 10 years, multiple crores. Now Cell is in that boat. We are doing the 4th project for them right now. But before that, we have done for LNT and all. But I would like to say that it's about the lab culture which we have to develop. And over a period of time, what I realized that if it's industry project, it's more contemporary research. Every 6 months, every 15 days, there has to be a deadline to be met. Every month, you have to deliver something. So the kind of skill sets which you are looking for in your team are very different. They are not meant for, these kind of projects are not meant for PhD students. These are the projects which are meant for mostly postdocs and project assistants. Because PhD students will come and go, that knowledge that will not get transferred. So typically, if you have to do large scale and industrial research, you will have to have few human resources with you for like 15, 20 years. If you lose them, it's pretty gone. And having in our system, it's very difficult for you to pay a postdoc 2 lakhs per month salary. Even if you want to pay them, it's very difficult because there is a lot of challenges in our system. So I think if you're working for industry and you're working at that scale, the challenge is that when you do industry research, you start from here, you go here. Then the next fund comes, you start from here, you go there. The next fund comes, then you start from here and you go there. This is how you basically climb the ladder. Okay. Mm-hmm. The person should be there. If that person leaves, you will not be able to do all of that. It basically means that you need the set of...
Yeah, I also face this problem, unfortunately, yeah.
The way PhDs or the faculties are trained, they start from here, they leave there, and then if they are not, it's not working, they leave it there, they start a new project, and then they leave here. So you will do multiple of these.
Yes.
So 15 years, you do 15 of these.
Yes, correct.
If you have to basically go here to here, it requires huge amount of different mindset, different governance. I think CSIR is much more capable of doing that, and this is why they have been a lot more successful compared to the academic organizations. Yes. But you have to learn that kind of a process and implement that in academic organization to basically deliver for the industry.
Honestly, I agree with you. I also face the same problem. We have to start from the starting point again. Because this is a very serious issue. I want to ask Vivek and Chinmoy. Vivek, you have a lot of collaborations outside India. And those partnerships give an extra mileage. In addition to or maybe on parallel with whatever the industry collaboration in India. How do you take that one? Because you said that when you have to increase the infrastructure in India, but outside is much better.
Yes. Most of my collaboration is with academic, like CCUS R&D, and those are the things that we don't have in our country, so we try to collaborate with them. We also had a collaboration with some of the food industry like Shell, BASF, and then I also had lots of collaboration in Indian industries. See, one of the problems, what type of collaboration I'm looking for? I'm not looking for something that I cannot do by myself. Once I make a material, the next question that if I have to really commercialize that I'm asking is, how do I scale this? So I need a collaboration from industry who has the expertise in upscaling, right? Especially these nanomaterials. And I never found one. I never found one industry who really can help me to upscale. Right? And the second part of it, in utilization, is very complex. You have to upscale the catalyst, and you have to upscale the catalysis process, which is about reactor design, process design. Most of the petrochemical industry who are using the catalyst, they have this multi-year expertise of bringing the catalyst, importing the catalyst from somewhere, some foreign country, and just putting it into the reactor, even getting the reactor from outside. So there are no expertise in the reactor design as well as the catalyst synthesis. So how do I collaborate? So the way forward, the way I see it, is that the academia develop entire ecosystem. We have an excellent chemical engineer, we have a process engineer. What Ashish said, this sandbox where you have everything. Right? I develop a catalytic system, I go to them and test. You develop a catalytic system, you test. We did this with the BPC, I will just give you an example. We develop a catalyst, published in a big journal. We showed that it works for 500 hours. We excited. BPCL came into, say, we are going to upscale. They upscaled before. Then we went to the upscale catalytic process. Within 100 hours, catalyst is, it lost around 20%.
I experienced the same thing.
Yeah, now what? Now what? Then look over the next stage now. So now I have to go back to the lab and redo things. But let us say this entire facility is there. So now you go and test your catalytic system. He goes and tests you. So that will really improve the efficiency. The sandbox idea is the first thing that we should have next year itself. That will have a huge impact onto the discovery.
Oh, okay. So, a common question. How much time I have? 5 minutes, 500 questions, sir. So, connected with the roadmap, I mean, it was nice. Dr. Bele mentioned that you're in a common facility for CCUS R&D, I mean, etc. and all. That's what I mean. We discussed in the roadmap. I mean, so accessible to industry and academy together. Okay. If we are going to design this, 7, 8 people going to design that facility, how and where and what should contain that? Anybody can answer.
I'll start. Somebody else is correct. So the basic idea is I totally agree with the idea of translational model. Okay, that exists for taking something that is created in lab at TRL 1 or 2 and taking it to, let's say, a applicable scale of TRL 6, 7, which where somebody, so that the technology is related to de-risk. Now, if you look at a catalysis technology, I mean, catalysis technology is, if you think about it, it's a multi-factorial technology where a lot of things operate together on the same material, and even the material identities are a challenge. Okay. So, as pointed out by Professor Ranjan this morning, there are new technologies that have come up. Okay, a lot of new technologies, a lot of new diagnostics that have come up. So, if you use those diagnostics, yes, and one of the things that I do in my lab is try to use something called operando technologies. So, I build Raman, mass, and all these things. So, we are able to look at these things in functions when they are working live. Okay, so what gives us an idea is how is the material performing, how is it changing dynamically, or how we know when it is going to die. So the decision making that sometimes if you just go, I just
come to the point.
Yeah, the point is yes, the speed of decision making that is needed. Yes, so normally if you just do the normal routine way, if you take something that takes a year to decide, you can decide that in minutes. If you use much higher information in the system. That's what I'm saying. Such facilities, if created, will be very, very useful for quick translation.
No, I just give a model. I mean, so just you can comment on that. And the model is Norway's long ship model, right? I mean, it's a beautiful model, works very well. And they work on the basis of US 45 tax credit model and all. Do we have something proposal to the government? I mean, this way, I mean, if you want to build them such kind of infrastructure.
Yeah. No. So I think maybe to answer your question, maybe I would request Vikraman to share his thoughts. FIA Vikraman heads R&D at GPS. Prior to that, he was at ICS Knowledge Park. He was a part of the core team. And in case some of you are not aware, Vivek, according to me, had done a pretty good job of coming out with a model to award grants but manage them well. It was a PPP model. They got people like ICC Knowledge Park, right? All these grants were managed by these institutions. They were monitored by them. So it was according to it was a pretty good model. So Vikraman, maybe you would like to share something.
Yeah, thank you. So I think Dr. Lege also said this testing sandbox should probably be a separate organization. Just to give you some background about IKP, it's a public-private partnership. The land came from the government, the investment came from ICICI. This was set up as a non-profit, but was told to make its revenue and be sustainable, which we did. So what would happen is startups, large companies, etc., would come use our plug-and-play services. Startups would pay us both a fee and, in some cases, equity, some royalty, etc. Large companies would just pay us like a flat fee for some of the services that they were taking, like DuPont and US Pharmacopoeia, all of them, right? So in case these technologies incubated out of academia, maybe in partnership with a scale-up company like GPS, etc., they come together to the sandbox. The sandbox can charge a fee for the operational expenses, maybe some share of royalty over the first 10 years or so, something that really helps this become sustainable in the long term. If you try out 100 technologies and 2 or 3 succeed, you will definitely have enough scale in the billions of liters to justify all the investment that went in. And that's just the model that we have shown that works for pharma and for biotech and for medical devices. Maybe something, but at a much larger scale because energy needs a much larger scale.
Yes, yeah.
And the other thing is that I see there are so many CSIR labs. One lab could be identified as a lab which will basically work exactly only on carbon dioxide captured license.
CCUS based
So we'll go there and we'll basically do all their...
So I have a question to that one. If you talk about CSIR, so who owns the accountability? You know, DST is there, NITI is there, MNRE or what you call the Ministry of Power, multiple players are there. I mean, is it going to be a problem or somebody has to take the accountability of, this 20,000 crore, in future?
there is no 20,000 crore. I think
whatever, one
selling
100 crore.
5,000 crore.
Yeah, 100 crores.
20,000 crore is not for us actually, so let's not talk on that.
Yeah.
So if there is 5,000 crores,
Even whatever the number.
the 5,000 crore or part of that fund goes to the CSIR lab and they will be the nodal agency which will implement like BARAC or something similar and they will implement everything. All the autonomy should be given to them. If you start questioning them every time, then it will not work.
So I am saying actually, industry will have much more confidence to focus on one direction, to invest the money or the venture capitals can also come on board. Looking that one. Is it going to help you? Investors, if it is a one model point to act on that? Or, you prefer to have multiple players?
IKP kind of a model definitely helped us in getting startups to work together, or BIRAC giving grants has helped us now see. It took almost 10 years, by the way, BIRAC to get fruition, get these translation done for us to now seriously start evaluating biotech models which are commercially viable. That if there's an agency that will do for it, perhaps. But again, the translation part is if the central agency like CSIR is going to lead it, I also have a fear when from a startup perspective. I have a startup which licensed out a technology from a CSIR lab. They are ready with the money, everything ready to pay. It still took them just running behind the officials for almost 8 to 9 months to get it licensed out. The bureaucracy to just license out a technology, it's so huge. So we need to see, it's easier to create consortiums and agencies as such, but we can't also create more bureaucracy to,
Got it, yeah.
on the top of tougher scientific challenges.
Understood. Already science is a challenging task on the top of bureaucratic challenge. I'm involved in that.
I'm at the receiving end, so
Yeah, okay, so good. Before going to the audience, maybe a few questions. I have last questions. So we discussed, we have academicians, so we have science, and then we have industry sector, and, the investors are there. Do you think are we in the right direction? Or if not, where we can correct it? You can answer. Yeah, okay, Lovish, okay. Yeah.
I think definitely we are going in the right direction.
Okay.
And the fact that the government has recognized that CCU is an important lever for decarbonization.
Mm-hmm.
You can always debate whether 20,000 is a big amount or a small amount, and whether there's an ecosystem which can actually monetize the benefit expected. But it's a good thing, a good step, I must admit. But yes, as we have discussed and debated a lot, that this has to be seen in a very holistic manner. it's the industry who's the end implementer of CCUS. So unless industry is comfortable with whatever work happens upstream, this is going to be a academic debate which can go on and on and on. So we have to see what industry is looking forward, how we can work closely with them, and how we gain their confidence. The money has to come from the industry, we like it or not. Industry has to be heard with, and we have to find a solution what industry is looking forward to.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lovish. I mean, Rajnish.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know whether right direction or not, but I'm an academic person, so I'll give an academic answer. See, if we talk about CCUS or green energy, the first thing we have to focus on is that we are doing all of this for net zero. And we have to understand that when we talk about capturing 1 molecule of carbon dioxide, sequestering it or transporting and sequestering it or utilizing it, we have to emit less than 1 molecule of carbon dioxide in the entire process. If we are not able to do it, it will not become net zero. We can keep talking about CCUS. When we talk about utilization, let me be very frank with you. There are many molecules which are currently being used and it's being produced from last 100 years. Urea is one such molecule where CO2 is reacting with ammonia and produces urea. Now, theoretically, the energy requirement used to be 25 gigajoule per ton for urea production. In almost 60-70 years of our existence, it has come down to 12.5, and it is not coming down further because it has pretty much gone there. 12.5 gigajoule per ton of energy is required to produce urea. This is not the CO2 emission. You have to see, if you are capturing CO2, it's 2 gigajoule per ton cancel process. So while we are talking about that 2 gigajoule per ton, let's talk about this 12.5 gigajoule per ton. This is the energy which is coming right from fossil fuel, which has emitted all the CO2. So if we really have to focus on, this 12.5 gigajoule. So I think this entire process has to be basically decarbonized. It's not only that CO2 capture will get decarbonized and everything will work. So majority of the energy is being consumed in this 12.5 gigajoule. If I add another 2, how does it matter anyway? So this approach, which has to be little scientific, that ultimately we are talking about net zero and every process has to be there. I will give us one more data before I end. Sweden per person CO2 consumption used to be 12 ton per person. World average is 5 ton. We have some 40 billion tons of CO2 emission, 8 billion people, 5 ton we consume every year. Or emit every year, whatever you say. So Sweden number were 12 ton per person. It has come down to 4 ton per person. And one of the major things they have done, they have completely gone to zero fossil fuel-based electricity. I think there are some learnings from some of these things. If we decarbonize our electricity completely, it helps in many, many ways. Then we will start looking into how do we basically electrify our processes. Right now we are using thermal energy to run our processes. And if we are able to electrify our processes, and when the electricity which comes from the grid which has zero fossil fuel, then everything solves, the problem starts getting solved. So I think the approach has to be step by step, and this has to be basically.
Vishnu has something to say?
I mean, I don't know. Electricity going 100% renewable is like very easily said. We have almost 275 gigawatts of installed capacity, but how much of that comes into the actual generation?
Yes.
I mean, it's easily said then. Yeah, I mean, we can't, the energy just does not come into the mix. Yeah. We can't, I don't know whether that.
Yeah, I think you can debate hours and hours and hours. That's possible. I mean, we cover a lot of questions also, but I just wind up, this conversation here. But before winding up, so maybe, I don't know if the time permits questions. Couple of audience or to the audience. Yeah. Many hands are raising here. Ashish, you can comment. Yeah.
I just no question, just a comment. I think it was very important what Ashish said, based on also connecting with Vivek. The 65% of that 20,000 crores is going to be loans running through RDF. RDF is not open to academics. RDF is open for private sector. So you bring in private sector who want to, let's say, pitch for a project under that mission. The private sector is very adept at bringing many collaborators, right? And that fund is catalytic because when we say RDF fund, it means you have to also, the private sector also has to invest. So it doesn't become 20,000. It becomes 40,000 at a minimum, right? So this 20,000 crore, let's not say that it's a small amount. It's only a catalyst to bring in far more funding, number one. Number two, it's also a catalyst to bring in the ecosystem that we are talking about. Because the private sector will bring in maybe a startup, maybe an academic organization, regulators, all the ecosystem players to run that project, right? Because they will look at viability of the project. And this funding coming under the mission is like a viability gap fund for that project. So let's look at it positively. This is a very good catalytic.
So that's exactly what I was also thinking. I mean, the risk capturing mechanisms like viability gap funding or getting into a carbon price signaling in the market, in addition to bringing private sector efficiency, time-bound private sector efficiency in the translation process, that definitely will add to, the catalytic and multiplier effect in the fund that's been suggested.
Just I have a few points. I'm not working towards the capturing carbon dioxide. I'm not working. As pointed out, reduce the carbon dioxide emission itself. So toward that, I am a scientist from Structural Engineering Research Center, CSR Lab, and we worked on the partial replacement of cement through fly ash and everything. We were the first to do in the country. Okay. Fly ash and GGBS, I did all the experiment and showed to the world. Now it has become common. We're beginning starting. Okay. Now recently we started working and can we replace, or not replace, alternative Portland cement, we have done geopolymers. Geopolymer using ash as the starting point. You have developed from 2000 onwards, you worked a lot on that, and we already built a building in Raichur. We have also built a road in Chhattisgarh. All these things we have done. A Portland cement, wherever it is used, we can use geopolymer in front. And geopolymer starting point is only ash. And that you can see the zero energy. So that kind of now, I'm waiting for the people to come forward and try on the big way. I'm not able to get for the last 10 years. I worked in SERC, I retired and worked in SRM University, and I interacted with chemistry people, chemical engineers, biotechnology, nuclear people, aeronautical people, and tried to push the geopolymer, inorganic polymer. Nobody is working in this country. They work on geolite, but not on inorganic polymer. So I think we should, and I met, and I'm happy that Professor Leela I met, and I want to instill earlier during my work on polymer concretes. So this way also we can look at, I can give input for that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah. Couple of hands.
Hey, thanks for this insightful session. Like hearing you, I'm more optimistic on the technology that is going to give rise to CCUS. But I was a little unsure about the economics of how it's going to drive. Perhaps Vishnu can pick it up. So taking the example of the cement company, taking the example of cement, the factory door cement costs 4 rupees, and by Professor Rajnish's calculation, 1 kg of capturing CO2 costs 4 rupees roughly. We have 0.8 kg of CO2 emitted for 1 kg of cement. So that's 80% of the cost will actually have to be covered by someone, because the cost of cement will actually go up by 80% if someone is capturing CO2 and storing it. The technology is in place to do it, but I'm a little unsure who will put in this extra 80% of the capital. If you could throw some light on it, it will be very helpful.
Why me? I have no idea. If you solve and come to me, I'll give you money. Honestly, a part of me wants to say that there needs to be a sustainable business model with carbon utilization happening at the end. But then carbon utilization has its own challenge to make it economically feasible as such. Maybe in the long run, we can think about that. But in my head, what I would imagine is there needs to be some sort of viability gap funding if the government is serious about this to fund it. But more likely, as an investor, what would give me confidence is having a more matured carbon market with clear carbon pricing and good carbon pricing. Like, I mean, we are very low. Our carbon pricing is very low in India. Like, I mean, I was discussing with Ashish earlier. We need to get to at least 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 rupees per carbon. Like, I mean, at least that $50 mark. If that kind of a carbon pricing market is there, we can still look into it. Then the question wouldn't be utilization, sequestration, or, I mean, we can actually go and sequester carbon and still get money for it. We don't have a market mechanism out there to support this. How long will we survive on, subsidies or like government putting in? Government can kick start it, but there needs to be a pricing mechanism. So until and unless that kind of a mechanism, carbon price mechanism exists in the country, honestly, I would have very hesitation to invest in such a technology. I don't think there would be enough incentives for the academia to translate it, and there wouldn't be enough pressure. Even if government puts lots of pressure on the industry to decarbonize, I mean, they can't just go negative on their bottom lines and just make make green cement or whatever. So that market mechanism needs to be created. It would take time, but I think
I think we need to. We need to probably wrap up.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I see one more hand, but probably we can.
People are hungry. So am I. But no, I'll just maybe just end on a positive note as an optimist. I think this the CCUS, the R&D, the roadmap, that should not be looked at isolation. The fact that GI targets also have come along with it, I think that it's very timely. I think when we look at both pieces of the puzzle, I believe, it should make way for, something meaningful. I can say that at least from a personal experience, talking of compressed biogas, few years back, there were no takers. Nobody was ready to invest in this sector. Last year, we alone raised maybe over 2,000 crores through different types of financial instruments and all. And one of the reasons was policy. For a change, I think India got this right. The first policy that came out called Satat, it had a lot of gaps and all. Now what we have is a cohesive, integrated policy that spans across, Ministry of Agriculture, MNRE, MOPNG, and so on. And probably India is the only country where we have such a policy for a very important molecule from this perspective. In fact, one of the investors from last year from whom we raised money was Samsung, CNT, which is the parent company of Samsung Group. And the reason what they did was they first did a global scan. They had decided as a part of their decarbonization strategy that they need to get into biogas. And they did a global scan. Their answers led to India for a change. That's because they saw something which they could not see in anywhere else. They have not done anything in South Korea as well. So I mean, that gives me hope that hopefully, the first step has been taken. Are the GI targets, all of that complete? Probably not. But it's a starting step. There are certain organizations such as NTPC who are doing something seriously tangible. According to me, what's coming up at Podi Matka would be of global relevance. So I think, I believe there is a lot to look forward to, and this is just the start. An important start has been made.
Yeah, I just want to conclude by saying that, yes, the discussion was very, in a positive note. I would say, we have our own problems. Certain, communication gap is there. We need to rectify, and then how we can move as a single-minded goal actually towards the net zero. Roadmap is, good platform. Good, document we can guide ourselves and take us to a net zero strategy, a sustainable India in the future. Thank you. Thanks for all the panel members for the wonderful,
Would like all of you to stay back and the mementos to be given. And if it were not for hungry bellies, more hands could have been answered for their own queries. But I'd like to request Mr. Subramanian to please step up on stage as board member, as well, also Ms. Pratima Ram, who's with us today. Can I also have Sri Krishna, the co-founder at GPS, to come up on stage, as well as Vikraman, who heads R&D for the mementos in no particular order. If the team can please come in with the mementos, about which as well we would like to tell you. You could hand over memento to Mr. Subramanian, and all the three others, Barsha, Sorry? Yes. I said by turns. That's what I meant. Yeah, it's of course. Yeah, because I know how do you split a group of 8 otherwise. So I leave it to a lottery, I would say. Would like to say a little bit about the gift itself. The team has ensured that it's chosen a gift that has a story of its own. It's from Ekatra, which is a sustainable handmade brand from Kota, Rajasthan. If you look up Ekatra, you will find that they are an incredible all-women team. They've been also recognized on Shark Tank. So everything that you see is sustainable quite a bit. One of you can just take it out. I don't know if it actually shows all the things that go in. I know it probably leaves a lot of curiosity, but a big shout out to the entire team that's put together. May we have a round of applause for all of you, for everything that's been discussed, for the speakers. And how do you even sum up a roundtable like this, from molecule to market? I mean, technology that marries sustainability, that then marries economics, as somebody in the audience actually said, and left it to Vishnu to answer the question. Menak, yeah, I think there's a demand for you to be up on stage, so you could probably be up there. But I would say that since it's looking like the vote of thanks hat has been handed to me, or if there's anybody else, Menak, do I look at you to do all the...
I'll just add maybe one comment that I remember. I think Professor Rajnish had mentioned that sequestration is not sexy. I think it is extremely sexy. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Lovish, I know you're in the background. Maybe somebody can just make way so that he's also in the group picture. Lovish, you've been so patient. My team at Pickle Jar is saying that almost more than a couple of hours, but great inputs. Once again, thanking everybody there, thanking Taper Fox that's been doing the production, Pickle Jar, of course, and GPS Renewables for bringing a conversation that is really the start and the first of its kind right after the budget outlay of 20,000 crore, but we hope there'll be more. Already I was hearing in the wings that there should be more of these. So I think that rests with GPS team. It's time for me, Vasanthi Hariprakash, to sign off from this fantastic conference, thanking everyone involved.
And thanks to you too for being a part of the entire voting journey. Hopefully we will be running many episodes in the coming years.
Mehnat, from being the founder at Pickle Jar Journalists, I'm now tempted to turn into a climate tech person. Now I think I've also found Vishnu, so there's some interesting career ideas opening for many of us. But on a serious note, thank you for all the insights. Namaskara.